I'm here with Chris Nuttall. He is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the National Weather Service office in Shreveport. And how long have you been in that role, Chris?
Since about the end of August, but I've been here in the Shreveport office since March of 2011.
All right, so he coordinates with us. He gets all the messaging out from the National Weather Service to us anytime they're doing events or anytime they're issuing some warnings and stuff like that. We'll get a better description on what exactly he does with them just for our viewers here. But Chris, how'd you catch the weather bug?
Man, I've always had it for as long as I can remember. This is all I've ever wanted to do. A lot of meteorologists can point to, some big weather event that really got them into weather and into meteorology, but I had it even before then. My mom always likes to tell the story about my grandmother's neighbor who asked me what the humidity was when I was like 4 or 5, and I said if I knew what the humidity was, and I said nope, but it's 47%. Um, but I mean, the one big weather event that really marked my childhood, and then I knew this is what I wanted to do was the tornado outbreak of April 26, 1991.
Hmm.
That's the one with the famous video of the people that get up under the girders video, is what I call
Oh,
it.
yeah.
That's the original Andover tornado. Huge outbreak across Kansas and northern Oklahoma, and I remember being on the floor of my living room with the old, dating myself, the old fold out Rand McNally Road Atlas from Walmart, and with a pencil and a ruler trying to figure out if the supercells were coming to our house.
Hmm. And that was the one that moved across McConnell Air Force Base in
Hmm.
Andover. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's just to the east of Wichita.
Yes. Yeah. It just barely missed the runway and the hangars that were filled with, these B-1 bombers and, you know, millions of dollars of military hardware. Yeah, and there's a really famous video that's taken right outside one of the buildings as it's going across the base.
Yeah, I remember watching that on YouTube. So we'll get right into this. So describe to me what you do as a warning coordination meteorologist.
Yeah, so my primary job is to basically be the liaison between us here at the National Weather Service and the outside world. So, I work directly with, the TV meteorologists like you, with our public safety decision maker, anybody in public safety decision making. So, local emergency managers, local government officials, state officials, even other federal officials, FEMA, um, you know, Forest Service, military. My whole job is to try to make sure that we provide the weather information that they need so they can make the best decisions that they need to make. We help interpret the weather for them, we explain the forecast to them, and then help them reach their so that they can reach their decisions. We don't make the decisions for them, but we provide the weather information and interpret it out for them. I kind of equate kind of my job is to being a lot like a doctor. Um, I like how a doctor explains an x-ray to somebody and then lets the patient make the decision. That's kind of what I do. I explain the weather to somebody and then they make that decision. So probably the one that people would probably be most familiar with is when we have winter weather around here, and if they're trying to decide whether to treat roads or close schools. I can't tell them to close schools. That's out of my lane, but I give them the best forecast that I can so then they can make their decisions.
Hmm. I remember when I spent the first couple of years of my career in Montana, and I just remember forecasting snow up there. It was usually going to snow, but down here, I mean, it is a whole different animal to forecast snow. But yeah, it's tough.
That's one way of putting it. I started off my career in Amarillo, and I mean Amarillo can get mixed precipitation events out there, but out there it's mostly snow. And I went through some blizzards in my time in the 3 years I was out there. So
Yeah, I remember one time we were coming back from Colorado and we got to Wichita Falls. There was a storm in Colorado the night before, but it had moved east across the plains and then we hit it right at Wichita Falls and we were We were slip sliding all over the roadways. I mean, it was bad. And some of those storms out in West Texas, they can be rough. I was just out there climbing Guadalupe Peak with my fiance. And as we were coming back, we decided to eat at one of the restaurants in one of those small towns up there. And then we got the alert on our phone of a dust storm that was approaching. And then I'm like, we got to go. We got to head east. We got to get to Abilene for the night. So they've got some pretty epic weather out there in West Texas. But we could talk about that all day. Let's go ahead and get into hurricane season, the predictions, and what Beryl was like for you guys. And I just remember Beryl being a July day last year where we were going to be on the messy side of the storm, which meant tornadoes, possible flash flooding, or some of the stronger winds were going to occur. I'm curious, what was that like for you guys?
Well, we knew in kind of, a couple of days before that we were potentially going to be in that right front quadrant as the storm, tracked inland. Several days beforehand, it still looked kind of iffy whether or not we were going to be on the east side of the eye and not get anything, or was it going to be to our west, or was it going to be way west out over central Texas, and not really affect us at all. But things kind of tracked a little bit closer to us as the days came up, and then especially within about 2 days before, we really got the idea that we were going to be in that trouble area. um, and we had the concern about wind and rain, but what really kind of started ramping things up for us too was we just had a whole lot of instability in there too. We were very warm, we were very humid, almost like a severe weather day in late May, early June. We had just a lot of heat, a lot of humidity in the air, and it was that extra level of instability that we had that really helped fuel that tornado outbreak and the development of all those supercells within Beryl. um, it's always, I can't say for sure that we wouldn't have had a tornado outbreak anyway, but that level of instability that we had really kind of added fuel to the fire, so to speak. We knew going in it was going to be pretty busy, but it exceeded our expectations, I would say. I don't think we went into that day expecting to issue what was it? I think 67 tornado warnings in the space of 8 or 9 hours,
Yeah,
and having
y'all
43 confirmed tornadoes. I I thought we thought, well, we could see maybe an outbreak of like 20 or something. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but 43 was a little bit more than what I think we were anticipating. We knew we had a pretty good chance for, widespread tornadoes, but those numbers were extreme.
Yeah, I just remember I remember telling my news director that things are starting to get hairy because we had 3 or 4 tornado warnings in the area, and there was even more over in Louisiana. I think in East Texas, it was 13, 14, 15 confirmed tornadoes or something like that, and it was just one of those days where you wouldn't expect. It's in the early part of or I that was the early part of July, wasn't it?
Yeah, July 8th.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. But in the early part of July, you just said 43 tornadoes, which is just absolutely insane for that time of year. I mean, I would think either in the secondary severe weather season in the fall or the primary severe weather season, we might see something close to that, but nothing of that degree. What is one thing you guys did really well during that time?
I think really, excuse me, the thing we did really well was how well we really worked together in the office. We had, you know, every workstation in our office had somebody at it. We actually had so many people in here, we didn't have computers for everybody to sit at. Um, our radar operators worked extremely well in tandem. Excuse me. We were constantly in communication with, all the folks in TV, with the emergency managers through NWS chat. We were really doing well getting the word out. We had a really, really high, what we call probability of detection. So we were picking up the tornadoes on radar, getting, warning them. We didn't have a lot of, I think we only had one or two that may have happened before we were able to get a warning out on them. Um, and also, for the most part, we were getting lots. We had very good lead time with those tornadoes. In fact, we all of our benchmark metrics that we're supposed to hit for severe weather events and for tornadoes, we exceeded all of them for Beryl, and I mean we really blew them out of the water. It's um, we did extremely well under what I would say extremely difficult circumstances.
Mhm.
Um, we were issuing, I think at one point we were issuing like 2 or 3 tornado warnings every minute. I've never seen that many storms with tornado debris signatures on radar all at the same time. It was, I hope I never see that again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that day very, very well. We had just come out of our midday show, our lifestyle show, I think it was, and I just remember when we hit, I think it was 12:30 or 1 o'clock. We were on the air through 6:30 that evening here in East Texas, and the event just kept on going for you guys in northwestern Louisiana as well. And diving into hurricane season. I've got in my notes right here that NOAA is predicting 13 to 19 named storms, of which 6 to 10 of them will be hurricanes. And then major hurricanes, they've got the range between 3 and 5. Well, Colorado State has 17 named storms predicted. Or 9 of those, rather, will be hurricanes, 4 possibly major hurricanes, while the average is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. What do you guys make of those predictions, and how can we be prepared as an inland area that won't see the coastal effects, but will see the inland effects?
So yeah, with that we have that. Not only are we looking at the potential for an above normal season as far as activity goes, but we're really looking at it there being basically like a 60% chance of having that above normal season. Now the reason we kind of a large range there of 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 5 major hurricanes. Um, and a lot of that's because we're in what we call INSO neutral conditions right now. So INSO is the El Nino Southern Oscillation. So it's El Nino and La Nina. The warm phase of INSO is El Nino, and the cool phase is La Nina, which a lot of people have heard of. Last year was a La Nina year, and in a La Nina season, there's typically reduced vertical shear out in the Atlantic, and there are typically very warm sea surface temperatures, which is very, very conducive for the development of tropical cyclones and hurricanes. This year we're in a neutral phase, but we're a little bit on the cool side of that neutral phase. So we might have a little bit of kind of the La Nina tendencies. So we might have some reduced shear, but the sea surface temperatures out there are much cooler than what they were last year. Um, there's also some other kind of long-term circulation patterns that are kind of conflicting and not really in phase like what they were last year or in previous years. So that's why the forecast from NOAA kind of has a little bit of a larger range as far as like the numbers that we're expecting and that little bit of uncertainty in there. As far as how people here can, inland can prepare, um, the big thing for people along the coast is, they have the additional issue of storm surge that they have to deal with. And, people that are living along the coast may live in evacuation zones. That's not really something we have to deal with here inland. Really, the best thing to prepare for an inland tropical cyclone, tropical storm, hurricane, or tropical depression, something like that, is really to prepare the same way you would for severe weather season. Because like we found out with Beryl, tornado outbreak, tornadoes are very possible with a landfalling tropical cyclone. So it's the same. You would take the same tornado precautions that you would any other time of the year. Heavy rain and flooding, same thing you would do any other time of the year. If you live in a flood prone area, you would need to get to higher ground. If water's over the roadway, excuse me, water's over the roadway, don't drive into it, turn around, don't drown. And then, probably the other thing with it that's a little bit more unusual is the strong gusty winds that are going to be last for several hours until the storm passes. But again, it's gusty winds, so it's whatever you would normally do to prepare for those things, which really again is what you would do during severe weather season. So
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to me like July is just such an out there month for preparing for severe weather. I remember last year, especially, it seemed like it was a big straight line wind year where we had those 70, 80 mile per hour winds that rolled through in 2022. And they rolled through in 2023. They just didn't affect where I live in the Tyler Lindale area, and then we had them in 2024 again, just from those complexes of thunderstorms moving in from the west or northwest. So July is kind of an out there date because a lot of people they're enjoying their summer vacations. They're not really paying much attention to the weather. They might pay attention to the weather to see, how rough it's going to be from getting to the car to the pool on a hot summer day. Uh, but with these early season tropical storms and hurricanes, Chris, is this something that has occurred a little more in the last few years, or is this pretty status quo?
it's pretty status quo. I mean, any landfalling tropical system has a threat for tornadoes with it. Whether it comes in June, July, August, September, October, November, it doesn't matter the month. That there's always going to be that threat. Now, the level of that threat, how severe that threat for tornadoes is going to be different with every storm, every tropical cyclone, and every you know individual circumstance. But that threat's always going to be there. It doesn't matter whether it's a landfalling tropical system in July or one that's coming in what we would consider the peak of hurricane system season in September.
Mhm. Yeah, and what conditions are you guys looking out for? I know there are tropical favorability zones in June and July. And what we often look for here at the station, and I know you guys do this and the National Hurricane Center does this, is where's the dry air? Is there Saharan dust? Is there wind shear over the tropical waters? What is the water temperature? So, in early season tropical development, where and what conditions are you guys looking for?
Usually, early in the season, the better conditions for development typically are more in the Gulf and down in the Caribbean, maybe in the far western Atlantic, because again, that's typically where the shear is lower. Usually, sea surface temperatures are very, very warm in those locations. Um, you know, but again, we have to get some kind of tropical wave to get there. Can it, you know, realize the conditions in place and start to develop? That's where we tend to look early in the season. But as we get kind of more into late July, August, September, October, then we start kind of looking farther out west into the Atlantic, out there, towards the Cape Verde Islands, off the coast of Africa, and out there deep into the eastern Atlantic or central Atlantic between you know the uh the Antilles and Africa, that kind of area. We start looking for the intertropical convergence zone. We look for those waves coming off of Africa as they're moving westward to start to develop.
Mhm. And Chris, we have seen, it seems like a lot of, whether you call it smoke or wildfire smoke from Canada and Mexico, we have also seen the Saharan dust. What type of conditions, and I'm kind of learning this too, but what type of conditions do you guys look as meteorologists when forecasting, the Saharan dust as it moves into our area?
A lot of that really depends on what the upper level winds are like down across the equator, and how if that's going to get transported this far west and then curve northward into North America. One thing that happened last year was at one point, we weren't really getting the Sahara dust. It wasn't really uh, getting transported clear across the Atlantic, but it was kind of getting held right there off the African coast, and it was keeping things cool. And that kind of uh, we kind of had a quiet period of tropical cyclone activity. Kind of delayed our after Beryl. We kind of had a long quiet period, and it kind of people were wondering, man, are we ever going to get any tropical development here off of Africa? It kind of delayed the African season of African tropical season a little bit. Uh, in August and September. So it's a lot of it's really we're looking for those upper level transport winds.
Hmm.
If there's in the circulation patterns, if there's an upper level high or an upper level low, depending on where those positions are, it's going to affect whether or not that dust can make it this far west.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I mean that's that was another new thing, especially as I was forecasting the weather in Montana, and then coming down here the last 6 years. It seems like at least once a summer we are dealing with that Saharan dust. My allergies are terrible during that time, and it's not fun to deal with. But does that suppress tropical development at all?
It does a little bit, yes, because it dries out the air. Um, it kind of it dries out the air, it cools it down. Um, yeah, it really kind of helps limit the tropical development a lot. Um, the Especially right off the coast or off the coast of Africa where the dust is typically more concentrated.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, the last thing I'll get to, I did post a video on my social media pages. Facebook media weather hypers. Apparently, there's going to be a storm in the middle part of June. I haven't seen that from the National Weather Service or the National Hurricane Center for whatever reason, Chris. But it just seems like these raw model runs, they're posted, people get the clicks on it. It's doomsday 2025. What would your message be as the warning coordination meteorologist in Shreveport when trying to find reliable sources with forecasting the weather and nowcasting?
A lot of the thing to keep in mind with a lot of that stuff is it is typically raw model data, and especially past when you get beyond, there's a reason why our forecasts are main forecasts only go out about 7 or 8 days. Once you get past that, even though we look out about 10 days, once you get out beyond that far, the forecast tends to have a lot of error and a lot of variability. um, so you've got to kind of take things with a little bit of a grain of salt. They can be forecast beyond 7, 8, 9 days. They can be very useful for starting to identify trends and can maybe give you something to watch for. Now, the big thing is, okay, it's got this, hurricane out at 384 hours in the future. Is it still there once it becomes 240 hours out? Is it still there at 180 hours? So that's the things you got to kind of watch. Um, as far as, reliable stuff to look for, sources of weather to look for. Find the trusted sources, and it's great to get your weather information from multiple sources. See what a bunch of different sources are saying, compare them, um, and find what's reliable. Usually, you're going to find if you find people saying close to the same thing, that usually should be a pretty good hint about what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you kind of make the argument that with how nonlinear the weather is, a butterfly flapping its wings in Amarillo, for example, could completely derail whatever's showing up in that raw model data. And then you'll see a model run that's posted, for something that's 2 weeks out, and then the next day, it's no longer showing that. And I saw something from Florida State, I think it was, that the GFS only had about a 3.4% initialization success rate with those storms at 168 hours out or more. So there's that. Is there anything else you would like to add on hurricane season and what we can expect here in Northeast Texas and Western Louisiana?
Well, one thing I'll add about those forecast models is every model has error from the get go because we can't measure everything across every inch of the surface of the earth, at one time. So that error that's initially there, with every farther time step you go, that error grows exponentially because it's got the error from now, the error from later, and then it keeps building on those errors. So once you get way far out there in time, there's a lot of error and variability in there. And also, farther out you go, there's also a lot more climatology and history built into the model of what to expect this time of year. So that's one reason why we get those. One reason why the model will tend to, especially the GFS, some other models will show um, bigger storms way far out. But as far as what people can do to prepare here, it's all about keeping awareness and paying attention and knowing what's going on. If you start to hear that there's a hurricane in the Gulf or a tropical storm in the Gulf, start paying attention to the forecast. Just maintain awareness and know what's going on. And then, if watches and warnings are issued, be ready to take action. Have your severe weather plan ready and in place. Because, like I said, our main threat here in our area, uh, since we don't have coastline, we don't have storm surge, we don't have those evacuation zones for storm surge, is for the most part the best thing you could do is to prepare the same way you would during severe weather season.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, sir. I will let you get back onto it because I know we've got storms somewhere in East Texas. The clouds look dark just to the north of Tyler about 30 minutes ago. So, thank you so much for your time, and this will help us out a lot. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.